there. So this is the third part of me interviewing my 3 children with neurodiversities. And today we are meeting with my youngest son, Sammy. Say hi to
Hello.
everybody. So Sammy is now 21 years old, and Sammy has multiple neurodiversities. And so school was a challenge for him, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So Sammy has dyslexia, dysgraphia, dyscalculia, auditory processing delay, sensory processing delay, vision processing delay, Berlin syndrome, quite possibly on the autism spectrum, and ADD, which is no longer called ADD, now it's just called ADHD without the hyperactivity. I think that covers all the neurodiversities that Sammy has. So because my other kids Olivia talked about dyslexia and Jacob talked about dysgraphia, today our plan is to focus on dyscalculia with Sammy. However, if I can get him to talk to me a little bit longer, we might cover a couple more things as well. So, Sammy, when you were in first grade, I'm sure you don't remember, but your teacher had some concerns about your learning. And by then I knew what dyslexia looked like and said to test you for dyslexia, that it was probably dyslexia. And so they tested you. You were the very last student in the school to be tested that year. In Texas, they do the testing in the spring. And you got tested 2 years earlier than they usually do the testing. So in Texas, usually they do it at the end of 3rd grade. He got tested at the end of 1st grade because I was a very active parent in the school district, in the school, and because my daughter was already diagnosed with dyslexia. So they were willing to test him 2 years earlier. What does that tell us? Well, one thing is you can sometimes get the school to do things that are outside of their norm. It did not take a lot for me to get them to do it. I literally just asked them to test him. But because I was such an active member of the community, they were willing to go out of their way to do that for me. So that's something to keep in mind as a parent advocate. But when he was tested, they never tested for dysgraphia, dyscalculia, or any of his other neurodiversities. It took a long time to come to learn what all of his challenges were. And so, can you share what some of your challenges with math were? What was the earliest thing you could remember about your challenges with math?
I think that was multiplication when I started having the most problems.
Okay, and multiplication is very hard for people with dyslexia and dyscalculia. Do you remember trying to memorize the math facts? Is that where the challenge began? Were memorizing the math facts the most challenging thing for you?
Remembering the facts, and also once they got bigger, I had to do more in my head, which made it more difficult for me.
And were you taught how to do it on paper, or was the process of how they taught you hard for you to process?
I think how they taught me was not meshing well with how I usually learn.
Okay. And so you and I, once I started homeschooling you, started working on math together. Do you remember Life of Fred?
I do remember doing it, yes.
Do you remember what your feelings were about Fred?
Dislike.
Can you elaborate?
As the book or as the character?
Well, the character was your problem.
He annoyed me.
Yeah. So, if you are not familiar with Life of Fred, it is a very common homeschool math curriculum, particularly recommended for kids with dyslexia and dyscalculia. And it's a boy who is 5 years old and becomes a college professor. And that concept drove Sammy crazy because it was unrealistic. And so he would ask not to do that math. However, I insisted that we do it because it was the first time that math was clicking for him any way, shape, or form. We tried Saxon, we tried Matthew C, we tried teaching textbooks. None of those resonated with him at all. So despite the fact that he did not like the Life of Fred stories, he was understanding the concept and he was able to do the math. So we muddled through it for about 2 years. And then we discovered Learn Math Fast, which is the program that we use for our tutoring program. And I highly recommend it. And we'll drop a link in for a discount code. I am an affiliate, and if you do want to purchase it, I'd appreciate if you would use my affiliate link. But Learn Math Fast worked more effectively for Sammy. Do you explain how math makes you feel?
Uncomfortable.
And how so?
It stresses me out because I feel like people expect me to do it super fast, and I don't feel like I can live up to their expectations, and they'll be annoyed.
So, if people were to tell you that you didn't need to do it super fast, would you still feel that pressure?
A little bit, but less.
Okay. And what are your feelings about math now as an adult?
A little bit of the same thing, just lessened to more extent, because I feel like I have more time and understanding that people will be slightly more forgiving or accepting along this line.
Do you use math in your everyday life as an adult?
Yes.
In what kind of instances?
When I'm playing a game or trying to figure out how much stuff I would need for something.
How much stuff you will need for something? What kind of stuff and what kind of something?
Like if I need a certain amount of stuff ingredients to bake, or if I need a certain amount of materials to create something, I would use math then.
Okay. And what are your feelings about remembering things like numbers? What is your experience with remembering numbers?
Difficult.
And now that you're an adult, do you think that there's any tricks that you can use that you learned earlier in life that can help you remember numbers?
Yes.
What kind of tricks have you found to be helpful?
Make sure to use my hands. And don't have it all in the head, even if you feel a little embarrassed about it.
So, can you do anything on your phone?
Calculator.
And how about on paper? Do you remember the tools that you learned? Did you learn touch point math?
Touch point?
Yeah, where you learn the dots.
Well, kind of.
I feel like we started using those kind of after.
I do that in my head too. When I see a number, I usually put a dot next to the number so that I can divide it easily and put it together easier.
Do you feel like the difficulties that you have with math make life as an adult more challenging?
Not necessarily, because there is a solution of a calculator, and if you don't have that, then I guess making people feel impatient is the one difficulty that I can think of.
And because math is hard for you still, does that hold you back from doing things that you want to do?
No.
That's good. How come?
Because if I need to, I can ask for assistance. And for so far, my jobs haven't been too math reliant.
I don't know if you remember this, but when you were in 11th grade, and you were still kind of struggling with math, but you had passed algebra, your algebra requirements, we asked how your feelings were about math, and you said you were never going to get a job that required you to do a lot of math.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah, I remember that.
And so, I mean, that's a good point, right? You're not going to look for a job doing something that is
heavy math requirements.
So, do you have any ideas of what you want to do with the rest of your life? You know, your mom already kind of has a job plan for you.
What is that?
My plan is for you to become a culinary a culinary artist that makes beautiful pieces of artwork out of baked goods. Any thoughts on that one?
Maybe someday.
Okay.
We won't know until, I don't know, I try more baking more.
Yes. I actually today learned about the community college having some culinary classes. So hopefully they offer in-person ones that you can do. All right. Thank you so much for talking to me today about dyscalculia. Is there anything you would like to share with parents about dyscalculia and your experience, and something to make them feel less worried about their children and their math struggles?
Math isn't everything, there's always calculators.
Okay, thank you.